is the Prevalent Risk Governance Podcast, featuring conversations with today's top C-suite executives and practitioners who not only look at third-party risk governance, but push through the boundaries to protect data. Now, here's Prevalent CEO Jonathan Dambrot and third-party evangelist Brenda Ferraro.
Jonathan and I are happy to bring to our podcast listeners a discussion that took place during the 2018 Shared Assessment Conference. I had the opportunity to talk with Charlie Miller, the Senior Vice President at Santa Fe Group, about continuous monitoring challenges and the future opportunities. But first, here is Jonathan and I discussing the 2018 trends in third-party risk.
So we're here at the Shared Assessment Summit.
I know.
Brenda, this is very exciting.
I love it. I have been here for the workshops the first 2 days. They were fabulous. There was a good attendance, lots of great questions. And now we're in the expo area, and we're getting to do a podcast and talk to people about their pain points and what are they doing at the summit that they're learning.
And I think they have more people at the summit here than ever before. So
it's over 300.
It's growing. It's growing. So I think they said something like 330 people. That's awesome.
That is really awesome.
And, the conversations I've had already have been great. We had a steering committee meeting and really, really interesting initiatives happening at Shared Assessments this year.
I like how it's a family. I've been talking to some of the people that have walked by and they've been able to participate in the podcast. Some of the pain points that I'm hearing about is, how do I get started? I really like the approach. I want to get the program up and running in my business, and what's the best thing to get started? And do I use the spreadsheet? Do I come to a company like Prevalent and get the engine so that I can identify risk and track it there? Yeah. What about the communities? So it's really interesting to see all the different levels that every industry is in. It's not everybody's all up to par in one space or advanced more. They just agree with the approach.
Yeah. I think maturity has become a big, part of the conversation. How can you help drive maturity? And, I'm hearing a lot of trends around IoT. So there's a new report on IoT that I was involved in. And, Poneman, with Larry Poneman and his team to really help drive that. And there were about 5 or 6 people involved in that. And, some of I guess the report is coming out this week. And it's just an interesting view of how IoT risk is changing over time. And that's one that I think is popping up. And then I think continuous monitoring just continues to be part of the conversation, right? So both pre-assessment, post-assessment, how do we do this? How do we integrate it? How can we leverage that and then get to more of a continuous assessment process? I don't want to say it here, but my sense is point-in-time assessment's dead.
It is dead.
It's dead.
You can say it.
So
here.
I'm going to say it here.
It is dead.
Point-in-time assessment's dead. I think our model and the model going forward is, how do you drive continuous assessment and continuous monitoring together using network and, exchange-based data? I think that's the only...
It's real-time awareness of your security posture.
Right.
Not just, hey, I finished this questionnaire and it's going to sit there for a year. Things change. You have identified risk. You put in a mitigation plan. You update your questionnaire. Your risk score goes up or down depending on your vulnerabilities. It is continuous.
Yeah, and I think the reality, too, is that people are trying to figure out not only where to start, but how they continue to drive this. And I think that's the nice part about being at the summit. All these conversations, whether it's with us or with other players, how do we come together as a community? How do we think about this together, and how do we solve this together? And I think that's got to be part of this dialogue here.
Right. And what's great about this community at Shared Assessments is that even though we've got competitors in this space, we're all working towards the same goal and we help each other out.
Yeah, I've seen a couple of knives out. I don't know. Maybe helping each other out. I would say.
You've been in different corners than I've been in.
I don't know. I think it's really interesting to see. I was talking to a couple of our peers. I'll call them peers.
Yeah, peers is better than competitors.
Then you don't get stabbed. About some of the changes, and I think it's been really good. The industry continues to grow. I think there's massive interest, and really boils down to, are we solving the problem? And I feel really good about our where we are, how we're driving this, helping customers get maturity and getting better visibility. And so I think that's what it's all about.
Great. Well, we'll keep talking to people and getting their pain points and understanding what they're learning from the summit.
And you're doing a presentation. That's going to be great.
Yep.
So I'm hearing good things about that already. People are
Already?
excited about your presentation. And
Nice.
then, yeah, so then we're doing some demos, and obviously, if people are interested in that, we can always do that whenever people want to
I'm
see
a
it.
little nervous though because I don't have a magic trick. You always bring magic to the stage, and it's kind of I'm hoping that you do just by chance, but I'm kind of thinking you're not going to.
No, I don't always bring magic. In fact, the last time I did a presentation was with PayPal. No, I'm sorry. 2 years ago, I did this with PayPal, and literally, as we're walking off the stage, Bob gives me a deck of cards. Bob Maley from PayPal gives me a deck of cards and says, "Jonathan, why don't you show everybody a magic trick in front of 250 people?" So
on the spot.
On the spot. That was
ad hoc.
Yeah. So I think maybe it's payback to him.
Maybe you should ask him to do a magic trick.
Yeah. No, that's not fair. That's not fair.
I think I'm going to go a little easy on him. We'll see where the conversation leads, but he's so intelligent. I have no idea the types of that thought leadership things he's going to bring up, but it will be fun.
Now, you've made people dance before.
I have.
Yeah. So,
the whole entire audience.
Yeah. So
in the morning.
So you're going to get people up on their feet?
I did not check to see if there was music available.
Now you got to figure it out. Yeah, maybe dancing. It does look like a little bit of a dancing crowd. It was my
conference, though, so I was the head of it. It's not like it wasn't a half an hour spot where I'm going to take over the summit.
I think you should.
You think so?
Yeah, why not? I think, it could be fun.
All right, well, good. So anything that you want us to find out with the people that we talk to, what's the most important topic that you would like to get information on from those that may be able to stop and have a podcast?
Well, I think we're excited to see who else can join us for the show, right? I think the reality is let's ask them what they're seeing and what they feel is the most important. I'm excited to hear about it. I think probably be pretty aligned to what we've already seen, but I think we have some good people coming by the booth.
And we did. One of those is Charlie Miller, the Senior Vice President at Santa Fe Group. Charlie, you are one of our favorite go-to people when it comes to third-party risk from a perspective of then and now. Let's talk about continuous monitoring a bit.
You have had so much experience. You worked at AIG, I believe, and now you're working at Santa Fe, and there's probably a couple more places that I would have to go into, like a long laundry list.
So I started way back at Merrill Lynch in the privacy space, and then we had, after GLBA came in, we had the SEC and FINRA come in to do a review of our third-party risk management program before anybody knew what that was. So we spent a lot of time providing documents to them way back when, and then realized that we were training them in terms of what they needed to be looking for. So that was an interesting experience. But from there, went to run the third-party risk management program at Merrill Lynch, and then to Bank of Tokyo Mitsubishi, and then to AIG. So been in a couple of different spaces. So.
In all those spaces, what would you kind of say was the evolutionary approach to getting to at least where we are today and where we need to go tomorrow?
Well, I think there was, I think the good news is that there's a really strong recognition of the threat that third parties and the ecosystem of third parties and fourth parties presents.
Yeah, it's like top risk in most companies nowadays.
Yeah, I think so, because you really don't know what's out there and what can affect you. So that's really one of the big challenges I think companies are facing. I think programs that have been built and established have focused on primarily information security and IT risk, but the risk landscape across all of those things is much broader. And I think that, we've historically looked at onboarding as one of the key touch points for all of the risks to be identified from an inherent perspective and what that third party is going to be doing for you. And there's a good opportunity to look at their control environment at that touch point. But the problem is that's a point in time, and it doesn't really look at your entire vendor population. Inventory is always an issue, right?
Right.
So one of the things that I think is coming in vogue and is getting a lot of attention is continuous monitoring. And I know that we are running a working group on continuous monitoring. And what are some of the things that we're seeing with that, in terms of where it's going, and what are some of the opportunities? What are some of the challenges in that space?
So I heard someone's trying to coin continuous governance. I kind of like that. Is it resonating with you?
I think continuous governance is one, but you have to realize where those opportunities exist. Mm-hmm. What are those threats that can be continuously monitored? And what are the things that you really can't monitor on a continuous basis, right?
Right.
So you have a lot of opportunities to monitor on some frequency, like financial risk ratings and stuff like that. So that's something that you can do on a periodic basis, makes it much more efficient to do that periodically, and then identify where those potential bad third parties are that may be failing from a financial perspective. So that's one area. The other that I think a lot of focus is on is information security, patch management, what are vulnerabilities that are out there in the traditional space, right? So traditional information security space. So I think that's really a good opportunity to identify where those threats are. So the next step in terms of where that needs to get to is how do you begin to mitigate, or how do you begin to ensure that those threats are mitigated in a timely fashion?
Right.
So,
tracking it to completion.
Yeah, right.
And making sure that their risk ranking has changed appropriately, and then you focus on the next big thing that they may or may not have.
Right. So that one I think is evolving towards that continuous governance kind of model. And the other piece that I think is less likely to see some changes in that space is probably physical security. So you still have to go and kick the tires. You still have to go and look at the, facility and things like that. Make sure the locks are working and the spaces are securely spaced and stuff like that. So I think there's that list of risks that you can basically look at when you outsource something. And then what are the ones that are prime for continuous monitoring or continuous governance? And what are the ones that still need to have that hands-on kind of look and feel and see and stuff like that? So
I'm a huge advocate of incident response scenario-based tests.
Oh, God.
Because when you test something and you find out areas of improvement and you have corrective actions, if you try to test something again and the threat landscape has changed, it keeps you on your toes and ahead of being prepared for when things occur. So if you're looking at offense versus defense. And when I think of continuous monitoring or continuous governance or whatever we end up calling,
we have a definition, by the way. We do have a definition, as Bob mentioned. So we do have a definition.
So I'm excited to talk about that.
Okay. I don't know what it is.
Not right now, but but I think that with regards to continuous monitoring giving you advanced awareness of what to work on versus trusting someone telling you they have a control or verifying that they have a control in place that's effective and enforced.
Right.
The end all be all is knowing if something is vulnerable when it happens in real time, and then being able to look at how do we mitigate those vulnerability exposures before it happens.
Yeah, and I think the other key piece is, as you always have told me, is, there's only a certain amount of resources and only a certain amount of money. So where do you allocate those, and where do you focus those resources and where do you focus those dollars, right?
Right.
So you want to be able to do more analysis of what the risk is as opposed to more analysis of what data you've collected. So I think that change really from a mindset perspective, as programs get more mature in this space, that's the shift that's occurring. And I think that's the trend that we have to watch. And as you begin to look at that opportunity in terms of refocusing those resources, because it's limited, and making sure that you're adding value. So predictive exposure is much better than, oh my God, it happened. And we're
now what are we going to do?
Yeah, exactly right. I don't want to respond to the incident.
Hair's on fire for real.
Yeah, exactly right. I don't want to respond. I want to prevent.
I liked how one of the workshops yesterday, they talked about it's okay to have a fire as long as it's contained.
Yes, exactly.
Once it gets out of control, that's when you're worrying.
Yes.
So try to make sure that you know what your fire could be and then have it contained and have a plan around it.
Absolutely.
So I'm excited about continuous monitoring.
Thank you. I am so excited that you guys are in this space. So you guys do a great job. Prevalent is one of our primary kind of licensees of our products and tools. And I think that we continue to have these dialogues.
And we've enjoyed working with you and our continued partnership with Shared Assessments.
Thank you for listening to the Prevalent Risk Governance Podcast. Connect with us on Twitter, Facebook, and visit us at prevalent.net. You can also rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts.